What's going on, everybody? Doc here. Average Gamer Guys, back again. Last Day on Earth action. Free to play. Let's get into it today. We have another chance at the big, icy boss man. I'm going to be talking about some of the recent kind of hidden I mean, that's really the only real good way to describe it, is some hidden changes. But before we do that, let's just take care of some tasks, you know? And let me open this up to say, I hope you're having, again, a good holiday season. Closing in on Christmas. So those of you that celebrate, I know myself included, I'm getting pretty excited, getting through the work week and closing in on being able to get a little bit of time off and go spend some time with some family, which I'm very, very much excited about to be able to do. So I'm going to focus on the positive of that today, but I do want to talk about, and we'll dive into, I want to do a little bit of testing, right? I like to just kind of confirm things for myself every once in a while, and I think we can go to look to do that here as we get through these some daily tasks that we do have. I was actually, one of the things that I have been doing as just like a little side tip for anybody is I have actually been spending the time where I'm kind of doing my daily tasks as one of the last things I do, and I'm trying to come equipped to essentially stay in the zones. So I'll walk up or run up here, knock out my daily tasks for the day, and then you know, probably kind of just hang out and you know, let my timing adjust and then go from there. And then that way, when I kind of queue in for the next time, you know, I'm already up in this northern zone and can knock some things out. That doesn't always work, but something to consider if you are kind of have some other things to do or some other tasks to knock out, you know, kind of leave those till the end. And then if you aren't gonna, you know, don't anticipate being able to play before your daily reset, you know, knock your tasks out, hang out up there, and then you can finish those up, run back, and you know, in a way, I guess, sort of save yourself a little bit of time and effort, which is what I had been doing. So I figured I'd share that with you. Now, the other thing I wanted to share is that I'm not a fan of this guy and his trade here. I'm actually kind of glad we got this. I'm gonna do it. I really don't think this has never panned out, and I'm pretty sure it's always the same materials. Yeah, it's always some fur. Okay, one first aid kit and a couple of those, and that I don't know, that doesn't feel great to me in terms of you know, getting turning in 10 pine or 10 oak. I don't think it's, let me know, is it worth it? Is that a worthwhile trade? I don't think it is, but maybe that's just me. Okay, we got that one, and then we're headed up to some frosty zones. We got some frosty armor on. I've got a slasher. I do have the weapon in question, which is the flare gun. Now, if you're not too familiar, things have changed with the flare gun. Not going to use it quite yet, but I will test it out. We have to kill frozen fast biters anyways. So a couple of things have changed. One, the damage that the weapon does has been reported to have changed, which I'm not sure if that's a calculation or a base damage deal or a combination of both. But we will test it out, and I am going to test it out against the Borealis because I am going to use a handful of them. In addition, probably more important than the damage, it's maybe arguable, but I can say more important than probably the damage is the craft. The craft has changed. In many instances, it's doubled or more than doubled. I think it was previously 2 aluminum. I think it was like 2 of all of this, and then I don't remember what. I got this on the Discord here. I don't remember what the, let me look here. Yeah, it was 3. So it was 3 iron plates, 3 plastic, and 2 thermite. And obviously now it's 5, 5, 4, and 10. I didn't notice I haven't actually looked at all of these, but I haven't noticed any other changes with these weapons. Like, this was 8 steel before. I think it's always been 4 thermite. I could be wrong on that. The torch is the same. This, I don't see any difference here from what I recall. 5 titanium was kind of always what it was, and then 3 factory parts I do recall. Yeah. I'll say this. I think my base thought is this. If they would have changed the craft or they would have changed the damage, they would have done one or the other. I don't know that I'd be too upset about it. If it would have continued to be a really good weapon, which I do think it's still going to continue to be a really good weapon. I think changing one of those two things would have been fine. Changing both feels pretty tough. I think that is where I am. My level of disappointment elevates. I think the craft, let's just be honest, the craft previously, I don't want to say it was too easy, but it was probably a little too easy. Now, granted, the issue with that ends up being, though, is you're not left with a ton of options for weapons that are going to be helpful in these zones. Granted, you get through your daily tasks, you go kill the Borealis boss the one time, excuse me, you can get access to the flamethrower, to the apocalypse breath, but for most players, they're not going to have access to titanium, and they're probably the folks that really need the flare guns and can't afford this increase are probably not going to be in a position to have multiple steel plates and factory parts, right? So the flare gun is, to me, is like, it's not quite, it's a handgun, but it's not quite the handgun of the frozen weapons. It's probably somewhere in between like a zip gun and a good crossbow, right? Like this crossbow. This crossbow is actually really good, but it's probably somewhere in between there. And there's not another option, right? The Scorcher, again, great weapon, fantastic, but expensive. Same thing with the Slasher. Slasher's not cheap when you consider the need for oak, copper, and aluminum. So the fact that there is just so few options, you're really going torch to kill most of the zombies. And if you're grinding with just torches, that's pretty tough. The thermite change, okay, that's fine. I don't mind the thermite change. I don't really mind the plastic change because this is a resource that you can find relatively easily. Iron plates and the aluminum plates, I think, could go back, right? If they would have just adjusted these two and then these would have stayed the same, especially the aluminum, and just how important iron is. I'm just thinking about kind of more earlier players, right? The players that are having earlier access now to this new zone. This just doesn't feel as achievable. And should this be easy? We can make the argument that it should or shouldn't, but you have lots of other good weapons that you can make a little bit harder and be a little bit more excited about crafting. The flare gun should kind of be one of those basic things that you're using on your farming runs and your daily tasks and those kinds of things. That's where I'm at with it. And I think what hurts it more so than the damage and the craft and all that stuff is the fact that there's not really a good in-between option from the torch. There's not another melee weapon, right? There's nothing else that you can do sneak attack damage with outside, again, of having a slasher or having the flare gun. And the flare gun was a great middle ground alternative weapon that obviously could also help to save you, some durability and some of the other components that are obviously kind of important. So that's my thoughts. I'm not a fan of the change. I'm not a fan of hidden changes either. I think that's one of the other big things that I kind of have more of a gripe about is, utilize your socials, utilize your Discord, utilize some type of, there's not an in-game notification, but utilize some type of notification to kind of let players know that these changes are happening, because it feels kind of sneaky, and I don't think it's intended to feel sneaky. I hope at least it's not intended to feel sneaky, but it feels sneaky when you don't disclose it and you're not upfront about it. And I think that's also probably rubbing some players the wrong way. At least for me, it was. You know, you guys are commenting. Thanks for everybody that, you know, jumped into the Discord and left some comments down below. I probably would not have caught the change, at least not right away. And holy crap. That is the biggest horde of zombies I have ever seen in a zone. That was wild. That was actually wild. That totally threw me for a loop. That was pretty crazy. I am not gonna lie. I'm honestly a little stunned about that. I have never seen that many zombies in one horde at one time. That is interesting, to say the least. Interesting, to say the least. So that's where I'm at with it. You know, at the end of the day, I do think, obviously, provide some feedback. I think it's fair to, you know, let the devs know and let Kafir know and let folks know that this is not necessarily a great change. I will also say this. I'm not surprised it happened. I'm not. I hate to say it that way, but I am not surprised that change happened, from the perspective that I think the weapon was probably a little too good. It's probably a little too good and a little too accessible for what they were wanting, right? And the crappy part about that is the flare gun up until this point, up until this recent update, had no value. Very little value. You could use it in some small instances, but for the most part, very, very little value. And so it kind of stinks because we finally got some use out of a gun and a weapon that we really, again, didn't have a whole lot of use for. And people were excited. I was excited to use them. I thought it was great. I love getting the ability to use some in our inventory and, you know, use some of it up. And we kind of get stonewalled a little bit. Again, still useful. They're still good. I don't want, you know, don't discount it now. Don't just get frustrated and say, hey, well, now I'm just not going to make them, because I do think they're still one of the better weapons that we have, and still, you know, the one of the cheapest alternatives, one of the cheapest things we can do with some of our resources here. So let's test it out a little bit, because I am curious. Yeah, so we get 35 damage off of it, which 35 damage is good. 35 damage is good. Like, you know, when you consider the additional fire damage that you get, it's fine. That's still solid. I think, you know, and durability for that weapon, for the flare gun, I've always been okay with, right? I'm okay with it. I think you get quite a few shots off of it. So all in all, again, is it a crappy change? Yes, it is a crappy change. It's a crappy change considering that it was pretty fun and it was pretty great up until this point. And then fortunately it's not anymore. So, but still a good weapon. And look at this. This is crazy. There's the other survivor that queued these guys in. Wow. The zombie hordes are out there. Okay, so we finished that. I did a little bit of grinding over there in that last location. Just to kind of finish the zone up, grab the thermite, do all that stuff. One of the other things that I've been thinking about is, so we've got the change, and if you're curious, is it going to change back? The likelihood of that is probably pretty dang low. We're just being honest with ourselves. So keep that in mind. And I hate to say it, but it's like kind of is what it is at this point, because we really know that it's probably not going to change. As I think about that, though, what are some other changes that we would like to see that could help to be a balance to that? Well, first and foremost, I do think there's an opportunity where, and one of the probably the other big complaints that's going to come out is, well, if I'm going to farm now, I essentially have to hit just one location, and that only gives me enough thermite to make one flare gun, which I think is a very reasonable complaint. And I say that because previously you could go to the yellow location and you'd get enough thermite to be able to make 2 flare guns, assuming again you had the other materials. That felt okay. That felt okay because you could go there with some torches. You could be really kind of, smart about how you went and how you farmed those locations. And, honestly, you'd be good. You'd be able to make a little bit of, we'll call it thermite profit, and you'd be able to get essentially 2 weapons for your trips there, which I think is really good. Now, again, can you do that with, torches, and can you still be successful? Absolutely. But the grind definitely kind of increases with that consideration. So one of the suggestions I would have, if they want to help to find some balance with this recent change, is make it so that we find more thermite. Put an extra thermite in the boxes, or give us an extra crate or 2 of thermite that we can find in each of the locations. I think the yellow location only having 2 crates typically is not great. I'm not a fan of that. I don't think that's enough. We just grabbed 3 thermite from there, which is good, but on average you're only finding about 4 or 5 thermite on your runs. Now this daily task definitely, I think, populates more thermite drops here, but on average I don't think I'm finding really ever more than 3 here for these thermite drops in the red locations, and I think that could be jumped up on average of 4. That way you're getting about 8 or so out of these. So just some things I think they could think about that would be a nice kind of offset to that balance change, is just give us access to thermite. Make the grinding of thermite a little bit easier, and make it so that we can find some profitability with getting that. I think it wouldn't completely fix it, but it would go a long way. Now this task is absolutely great, by the way, because as you can see, we're going to end up having 4 of these, and if each of these has 3 in it, that's awesome. It's probably the most thermite I would say I've ever seen in one run here, which is, yeah, there's 3 there. And then hopefully we can get 3 out of this. That'd be good. See, this right here, I'd be good with, right? This takes those advanced supplies. See, we got 2 there. Still happy with that. This takes the advanced supplies. You've got to have, the armor. You've got to have the berry tincture, which is something that I should have brought. And I think just being able to get a little bit more thermite out of these locations would be good. I think that would help to balance it out a little bit, and I think make the impact of that change not feel so bad, not feel quite so bad, which would be a good thing here. So I am just out of here, I think. Finish a task. I don't want to lose my boots. So I'm going to peace out, and I'm going to go. I'm going to run back. I think we got the Borealis. He's updated. We still got our 3-day. We still got our 3-day reset. I still don't. I don't know. I wish with the hidden changes that they made, I wish they would have made this a hidden change and would have adjusted it and, reduced it. Take it down to a day. A day would be so fine. But I digress. I've chatted about that enough. So we'll go ahead. We'll get situated here. We'll get our armor on. I've got an extra good set. We'll run it over. I'm gonna run some flare guns against the boss. And I did take a look back at a recent video of how much we were doing. I think it was 18 and 24 damage. 18 damage with the flare gun when he was icy armored, and then 24 without. So we'll see how these things fare as we jump into this boss fight. So we'll see you here in just a second. All right, we're here. Time to fight the big guy. Let's get into it. We got a couple of flare guns with us. I'm gonna just use these pretty liberally. Should still be pretty effective at killing the big guy. But I am curious to see. So it's 10 damage now. Yeah, that's a little less than ideal. It's definitely a little less than ideal. Oh, he opened up 2 of these guys? Oh, I'm so dead. Oh, man. That, getting 2 of those guys wasn't great. Yeah, equip this super fast. We'll get our things back here. I am going to go ahead and also, I'm going to try out this flamethrower. I'm curious to see how good this will end up being with this guy, because he is pretty slow. So I'm curious to see if this is going to be like any good. See if we can get out of his range here. Yeah, this thing kind of smacks, not gonna lie. And with the range that it has, we're able to hit him from here with this. That's pretty good, actually. Now, again, I don't think that's probably not worth it in terms of crafting them, but like, that's pretty solid. Just gonna use this up and then throw these on here. That's the best way to do this. All right, so we essentially had like 8 damage taken off because we were getting 24 previously. With when he's unarmored, and then we were getting 18 when he was armored, and it went down to 10. I'm just gonna use one of these just so I don't die again. You know what? I'm pretty impressed with the flamethrower. Not gonna lie, the flamethrower is actually quite solid against the big man here. Mostly because it has a really, really good range. So I was happy to use that up. I don't see a reason. I'm not going to use it for much else. So happy to have tested that out. Again, I don't think the craft is worth it. Oh, man. Come on. They don't give you a full set now either of the armor. That's just... The problem ends up being now is they've really kind of artificially made this boss harder than much harder than it was. I think it's a cool boss fight, but now because of more, I don't want to say more limited options, but because the options for getting the weapons are harder, and the less, now with the damage reduction of the flare gun, you're going to need more flare guns to be able to take the boss down. And I'd argue, again, can you cheese the boss with, with torches and all that stuff? Yes, you can. I'm going to get somebody in the comments to be like, you could just hit him with the torch. Yes, you can. Absolutely. You don't need to use the flare gun. But the flare gun is a great option for killing the boss, right? Like, you shouldn't not be using the flare gun. If you want to min-max this, by all means, dance around him and hit him with the torch. Most players are just going to use flare guns probably, because you can stay back behind these barrels. you can stay protected, you can get your shots in, you save your armor, which is important, and you know, you're probably decreasing your chances of dying, although we also died during the course of this, so I don't know how much that says. Maybe we're just bad at the game. I don't know. I just it's like they've, you know, again, they've kind of artificially made that boss harder just by making him take less damage from probably one of the most consistently used weapons that folks are going to be attacking him with. Now, again, there's probably a world in which if you have slashers and things, just taking a look at this though. Oops, I always click the wrong button. You know, again, I was impressed with the flamethrower. That was pretty good. I would say if I had easier access to flamethrowers, that would definitely be something that I would use against that boss, especially while he has the armor, because, again, really good range and ability to do that. This isn't a terrible craft, with the exception of steel and factory parts. Rubber, you do need a lot of this for the ATV and some other things, but at some point, this becomes not very useful. Rubber's not used for a whole lot once you've crafted your ATV and knocked out a handful of other things. 3 thermite actually seems very reasonable for the flamethrower. You actually put less thermite into the flamethrower than you do the flare gun. See, that's the part here that doesn't make any sense. This needs to go back to 2. Send this back to 2, put this back to like 5, put this to like 3 or 2, keep 5 here, and it would be fine. Like, these weapons, I understand Scorcher, the Slasher, the Flamethrower, this all taking 3 or 4 thermite makes perfect sense to me, right? This could probably be reduced. I would like to see this go down to like 2 thermite, maybe. Maybe 3 would be reasonable. The rest of this craft, if it did that, that wouldn't be too bad. 10 copper is kind of a lot. I'd like to see this. If this went down to like 5 copper and 3 thermite, I'd be pretty happy with this. And I think this would be a very, very good craft. But why 4 thermite when you've got the flamethrower that only needs 3? Anyways, this isn't a bad craft outside of steel, right? Like, here on my free-to-play account, I will not be making flamethrowers for a long time, just because these steel plates are way, way more valuable to us at the moment than, you know, using it to craft this. Cool weapon. I did like that. I actually am glad I tested it and used it because it was great, and I would probably have not said that previously had I not done that. I don't mind the fuel. I don't mind the rubber. I don't mind the 3 thermite. I think that's all very reasonable. 3 factory parts. Okay, it's good. So I could get behind this. 4 steel kind of sucks. If this changed to copper, I'd actually be very interested probably in crafting these with some regularity, if I'm being honest with you, because I have spare factory parts now. Most players, once you get, again, some pretty good modifications on your weapons, you'll start to stockpile these a little bit and then don't have a ton of use for them. That's the nice part about like the flamethrower and this apocalypse breath utilizing these, is because once you've made your mods and gotten your weapons well set up, you really don't have use for these. So it's kind of neat to be able to do that, because again, you're not crafting a Glock when it takes 15 titanium. You're not crafting an M16 when it takes 17 titanium and 5 ash planks. So what the heck else are you going to do with your factory parts besides do that? So that seems fine. I'm good with that. I'm actually okay with that for the most part here. So my ask, if the devs were watching this video, would be consider reducing the thermite here. Consider taking some of these materials down just a little bit, kind of meet in the middle from where it was to where it is now. If you're going to leave the damage the way that it is, fine, but the craft needs to be easier. Consider reducing copper here. And besides that, I'm generally okay with this. I can't say that I'm okay with this craft. I think 8 steel's a lot. However, I understand it because the Scorcher is so good. So, like, fine, you know. I would like this to be a little bit more accessible, because again, you're evolution of fire weapons. Nobody's crafting Molotov cocktails, and maybe I need to do more testing with these, especially against the boss. Maybe I'll do that on my main account. When I open up Borealis, I think I got one more day for him on my main account. Maybe I'll just bring 20 Molotov cocktails and eat them at the boss. But your progression of weapons goes from lots of torches, and reasonably should probably follow this line. Should go torches, then you're probably making a few flare guns, then realistically you're probably making the slasher before you're jumping into the scorcher, which again would be fine, and that's kind of how this craft sets up. Producing copper here a little bit, again cutting this in half, I think would make this very, very reasonable, and maybe one thermite off of this. And then you're jumping into things like the scorcher, then the flamethrower, then the apocalypse breath. This, if I had to make any changes here, just cut out like 4 steel, right? Steel takes a long time to make. Cut out 4 steel, and I wouldn't have a ton of issue with this craft, to be honest with you. And then I think, again, if you wanted to focus on that, if you're going to be grinding, doing your daily tasks, if you're going to be jumping in and getting ready to go fight the boss, and you want to make it easy on yourself without using a bunch of torches and a bunch of healing kits, then you could prep up. You got 5, you really got 8 days. You got 8 days to prepare to get enough materials to make a scorcher to then bring that to the fight. Now, some of you might say, well, Doc, you could do that anyways. Absolutely, you could. If you spent 1 day, or you spent your ad skips 1 day's worth of ad skips, you would be able to get, if you had the materials, of course, you'd be able to get enough steel to make this, assuming you had the springs and the factory parts, and that would be fine again. But a small reduction here. Small reduction here. I think those crafts are good. And then, again, taking a look at this, I don't like this needing steel. If this was like a steel plate and some copper, I actually could get behind that. Like 1 steel plate, 5 copper, or something like that. The rest of these materials, I think, be pretty good. And then this honestly the Apocalypse Breath to me feels like a very reasonable craft, outside of the fact that you got to grind 5 titanium, which is very hard to do. But other than that, the rest of this is like I'm good with. And it makes sense, right? 4 thermite here, 3 I'm fine with. 4 here feels a little high. I'm okay with this, but 4 for the flare gun. When you look at the other options where you could spend 4 of your thermite, which arguably is the rarest of the resources out of anything here, besides the Apocalypse Breath and the titanium, 4 thermite for this feels crazy to me, now that I kind of do some comparisons. So feel free, let me know what you think down below. I think I always try to be reasonable. I'm not happy with the change. I'm going to say that. I'm going to just repeat that again in case anybody thinks I am. I'm not. I don't like the changes. I think there's some modification they could do, kind of tone a few things back. And then again, I think there's some changes to thermite drops, especially in those locations. Populate those a little bit more, add more thermite into the boxes, allow us to get a little bit more thermite with regularity, I think would be a really, really good change. And I think would help that. It would help the crafts to not feel more difficult than they are now, and make those grinding sessions not easier, but just a little bit more rewarding on the back end, which would certainly be nice. So we are taking a look here. I'm almost at the dog saddle. I don't have a true friend yet. I don't think I spend any of this yet. I honestly, I really would think about the flamethrower here. I would. I'd think about it. I'd think about it if it was a little bit of an easier craft. I'd think about it. This is the tough part, because this is what I was really thinking about. Was trying to get this upgraded, or these. These were the two that I was really, really considering, and we're pretty close to that. We're pretty close to these, but I think I'm going to hold out. I think I'm just going to work towards getting the repair bench. We got 3 of the Borealis skills down, 7 more. This is going to be a grind. We're going to keep clicking away at it, but I think that's where we'll be. So let me know your thoughts. Hopefully you enjoyed. Always open for discussion. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know, again, where you're feeling, which is probably not too excited about the changes. But if you got some good ideas, besides just reverting it, because that's probably not going to happen. But if you got some good ideas on how to make it a little bit better, how to adjust it a little bit, or adjust components of it, right? I could see leave the craft the way it is, but bring its damage back. That could be a reasonable argument to be made as well. Or again, find somewhere in the middle, reduce the craft a little bit, add a few points of damage back. Maybe a little bit better balance for the boss fight there. And again, maybe some other changes to the locations, to the zones. Maybe, I don't know. There's definitely some other things that could be done. I don't like the change to the Borealis boss not giving the full set of armor. That also doesn't make a ton of sense to me. That needs to come back. Give the full set of armor. That was at least a nice reward. What the boss himself drops is useless. But being able to have that full set of armor was at least nice, because then the good part about that was you could grind it up, you could do your daily tasks, get the materials to get your fur armor, to do those things, use your berry tinctures, all that. Then you could prep up to fight the boss over the course of that 8 days with the reset. You could walk in there with reinforced armor, hopefully, well, you need it, basically, and you could fight the boss, and then you essentially get a little bit of a reprieve from the Northern Zone grind, because you get a full set of armor that you can now go use to do your grind, as well as knock out your daily tasks, which makes a ton of sense. And that full set of armor, it's not going to last you a ton, but it'll last you a couple of days, depending on how much you grind and how much time you're spending in those Northern Zones. And that actually felt pretty good. Not being able to get a full set of armor, I don't like it. Bring it back. It was cool. It was a good change. It was nice. It was good loot. It was good loot. There's no reason to change that. That loot by itself, for the completion of that at that crate at the end, I was satisfied with. Personally, I was satisfied with. I think it's a good mix of stuff. It rewards you for farming the Northern Zone. It gives you some upper tier materials that are helpful for lots of things, weapon modifications, crafts, all the stuff that you need. ATV, there's some components there for a few of those things. Steel especially is helpful. So it was good. I don't see the reason to change that. So bring the armor back. Bring the armor back. But let me know. Thank you so very much. We're gonna keep grinding, and hopefully, again, you're having a good holiday season. I'm gonna flash some socials. Like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube thing for me. Really do appreciate all the support. Trying to get to 10K. That's our next big channel milestone. And we just really, really do appreciate all the support here. Still nothing on the horizon as I finish up here for a winter event. So I'm getting a little nervous because we're getting kind of close to Christmas. But I guess we will we'll see if we get anything, and hopefully we're surprised here very soon. As always, thank you so very much for watching. We'll have lots more Last Day on Earth content coming up this week. And we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.